Hey everybody, Jeff Coffey here, coming to you guys from my home studio here in Florida. And just wanted to jump on here and share something really cool that happened with me a couple of years ago when I was on the road to Chicago. I was very fortunate and very privileged to be interviewed by Mike Brooks from Bass Guitar Magazine. It's a worldwide publication, really great magazine. A lot of my heroes are in this magazine. Been reading this for a while, and for me to have the opportunity to have a write-up in here is pretty cool. And so this happened, right here a couple of years ago. Photo credit by my good friend William McClintock from 90 East Photography out in Nashville. Great shot. But yes, this happened a couple of years ago. It was a phone interview. I was in my hotel room in LA and I was talking with Mike on the phone. He was in London, and it was late evening for him. It was a morning call for me, but we talked for about an hour, and this is the result. And this came out in the 150th special edition that came out in December of 2017. So anyway, I just wanted to jump on here and kind of share this with you a little bit. So yeah, it reads, Coffee time. Chicago bassist Jeff Coffey catches up with Mike Brooks for a chat about life in one of the biggest bands in AOR history. All right. When you're the new boy in a band with a 50-year history, fronting the band and filling the shoes of one of the most distinctive singers ever would prove to be a little daunting for most musicians. Not for Coffey, it would seem. Who through hard work, persistence, and constructive networking, and a touch of good timing, has found himself sitting in the driver's seat of Chicago, one of America's most perennially popular rock bands. Driver's seat. This band hasn't taken a single year off in 50 years, and they currently are enjoying a new lease on life. Recently, Chicago have been touring globally and playing doubleheader shows with the likes of Doobie Brothers, Earth, Wind & Fire, and Huey Lewis and the News. Coffey is very much aware of the privileged position he now finds himself in. This is a unique situation, he says. It's been nonstop work for 50 years, which is quite an accomplishment. And for me to now be a part of something like this is hard to put in words. I listened to Chicago when I was growing up. In fact, I was a budding trombone player in high school and college, and James Pankow, the trombone player, was my hero. To be able to jam on stage with him and this group of unbelievably world-class musicians is a complete honor and a privilege. It was. Every night, I had the honor and privilege to play music with that incredible lineup of musicians. Every night I had amazing musicians in my ear, and I got to play along with them, and the crowd responded, and we interacted with them, and it was musically speaking, a highlight for me. So it was a lot of fun. All right, so it goes on to say, few bands make it to a 10-year anniversary, let alone 50. But as Coffey notes, musical taste and trends are cyclical. Perhaps the band is now being recognized as an institution, he explains. Some of the more recent self-titled or self-released records didn't catch the ears and eyes of many of the people, but the die-hard Chicago fans were buying them. And the one thing I have found very interesting about traveling with these guys is that this band, particularly here in the U.S., is treasured by their fans. They love the music, and when they come to the shows, they really want to take a trip down memory lane. They've been coming every year. They have. That's one thing that I will take away from my experience with Chicago, was the fans truly treasure that band and the catalog of music. Die-hard fans. And some really great people that I met along the way. Really cool experience. Coffey's journey was a gradual process, not without its pitfalls. But he found himself in the right place at the right time. I've been playing in bands professionally for over 27 years, and I put out a couple of solo records between 2000 and 2008 before taking a short hiatus from music. But this was a huge gaping hole in my life. This paragraph goes on to talk about all of that. I can tell you firsthand what it was like. It was yeah, I put out a couple of solo records between 2000 and 2008. And then you know, after years of doing it, I just got fried. I got burnt and just took a break. And I didn't play a note for probably 3.5 years. Packed up my guitars, didn't sing in the shower, didn't sing in the car, didn't turn the radio on. I didn't even want to talk about music. I just was burnt. I just wanted to do something else for a while, which I did. And but then, you know, I missed it. It was a big part of who I am, a huge part of who I am, a musician, and I missed it. I had to go back to doing it again. So I started going back up to Nashville and networking with some friends of mine, a good friend of mine, Tom Hurst, and Chris Nix, and these guys, David Parks. They were doing this, and they still are, doing this Nashville Drummer Jam, and they would get together twice a year and honor an iconic drummer. So the first one that I went to was a Stuart Copeland tribute. So it was a whole night of Sting music, and I'm like, sign me up, I'm there, you know. Play low, sing high, that's my thing. So that was my first time going back up to Nashville and, you know, networking with a bunch of musicians, and all these guys had big touring gigs and with country artists and rock artists, and so it was great one-stop shopping for me to network and hang out with these guys and get you know, immerse myself into the scene in Nashville, which is basically becoming like LA East, you know, a lot of people moving there. So long story short, that first night I met John Cowan. John Cowan, amazing bassist, tenor singer, musician, all around sweet guy. Currently plays bass with the Doobie Brothers. I met him that night. We exchanged cards, and you know, I'd kept going up to Nashville, you know, once a month for the next year. And around that time, Keith Howland from Chicago was calling around because they were still looking for a tenor singer bassist to give Jason Sheff a break from Chicago. And so Keith called John Cowan and asked, hey man, you know any tenor vocalists, bass players? And he's like, yeah, you got to call this guy Jeff Coffey. And then he called another friend of mine, Ed Toth, who used to be the drummer in Vertical Horizon, who is also the current drummer in Doobie Brothers. And Ed said the same thing, yeah, call Jeff. And then he called my friend Chris Nix, who's a guitarist now for Jonathan Davis from Korn. He said the same thing, yeah, call Jeff. And sure enough, I got the call from Keith. We talked, we hit it right off the bat. Kind of seemed to be coming from the same place musically. And sent in some video auditions. They liked what they heard. I went to Detroit and auditioned for the band. And I thought, hey, you know, I had to learn the entire show, 33 songs, and sing lead on 2/3 of the show and memorize the lyrics. I had 2 weeks to do it, so about 2.5 weeks. And so I crammed, and I thought, hey, if I don't get the gig, at least I can play a set of music, Chicago music with Chicago. I was good with that, but got the gig, and I was with the band for, you know, just shy of 2 years. And it was an incredible experience. It really was an amazing experience. So that was that paragraph in a nutshell. Let's see, where do we continue on here? With such an extensive repertoire, Coffey had to get his head wrapped around 33 songs for the show, although thankful it wasn't the whole 36 Chicago albums. I went back and I really studied the material, he tells us. I wanted to do it with the same inflections as the records, because a lot of people had said that aspect of the show had been lost a little bit. And it feels natural playing the music because my role in various bands over the years, I've played low and sing high. That's my gig. That's the bass player's gig, right? Play low and sing the high harmonies. In this country, at least, Chicago are best known for their 1976 single, If You Leave Me Now, written and sung by their then bassist, Peter Cetera. As Coffey explains, I never associated Peter Cetera as a bass player. For his bass playing, excuse me. Because when he was big in the 80s, there was a lot of keyboard bass happening. You know, David Foster. I think even Peter Cetera even said at the time when they were recording these records, it's like, I don't want to play bass, you play the bass, I just want to sing and write these songs. And so David Foster was playing a lot of keyboard bass on that 80s stuff, 16, 17, and 18, you know. And so I never associated Peter Cetera as one of those bass player guys, you know. But then as I started digging deeper into the material, the older material, I was like, my God, this guy's amazing, which he was, you know. I have a whole new respect for Peter Cetera now as a bass player. And I had the privilege of meeting Peter last year after I had already, I had left the band. I had the opportunity to go up to Philadelphia and see Peter at a show of his at a casino. And I had never seen him live before. So it was really cool experience. Good buddy of mine, Chris Rodriguez, plays guitar with Peter Cetera. Got me backstage, my wife and I, and got to meet Peter, got to talk to him. So it was really cool not only to meet him, you know, and talk with him a little bit, but to meet him coming from the perspective that I was coming from, you know, his old band, doing basically his role in the band. And we talked, it was a great conversation. He was very gracious, very cool, very humble. And, you know, I even told him, I said, man, your bass playing on some of that older material is fantastic. And his response was, yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, like any musician, he was like, yeah, God, there's so much of that stuff when I hear it. I wish I could go back and do it better, you know. But I told him, I said, man, I could sit and talk with you for hours. And he says, you know what, next time we'll do that. So I'm looking forward to that next time, Peter. All right, so let's continue on here. Unsurprisingly, Coffey can be wielding his trusty Fender Precision bass for much of the show. Although there is no amp in sight, what gives? The band has a very low stage volume, no wedges, no amps, so I'm pretty much going direct. And I can finish this paragraph up myself as well. We started talking about gear. Yeah, with that Chicago gig, there's no amps on stage. It's very quiet stage volume for the horn players to be able to have a lower stage volume surrounding, so that not a lot of bleed into their mics, you know. So, I mean, if you were standing on stage and the PA was off, all you would hear is drums and horns because everything else is direct. So it was the first gig that I had ever done where I didn't have a rig on stage. So it was basically plugged direct. And I was talking about incorporating in the future some pedals, you know, messing around with some pedal ideas. But, you know, as the article states, I was playing my Fender. I have a 78 Fender Precision bass, which I love. And I play GHS strings. And I wanted to thank the good people at GHS Strings for hooking me up with strings and being so supportive of me over the years. I love GHS Bass Boomer round wounds. Those are my strings. They're the best sounding strings that I've come across, and that's what I use on live shows and recordings. Love it. But I also have my 78 P bass, and I have a Music Man Stingray. But I'd also want to say, give a big shout out to Joey Brasler at Fender, because when I was with Chicago, man, he hooked me up with some great basses. He gave me a couple of P basses and a beautiful maple neck Fender Jazz 5-string that I played on the ballads. So I was able to keep my 78 bass at home and take care of it. So he gave me some road basses, and man, I love the Fender bass. And the thing about the P bass, to me, it's like the quintessential rock bass, man. You plug it in and it sounds good. That's why it only has 2 knobs on it. It's a tone knob and a volume knob, because you don't need anything else with a P bass. Love the P bass. So, yeah, that was the first time that I'd ever gone just direct. And it was fine, because you go through a little compression EQ through the monitor console into your ears, and out front, same thing. It sounded great. And so it created a more perfect environment. Not perfect, but, you know, quieter environment on stage for the horn players. So, but yeah, that's pretty much the article in a nutshell. It goes on the last paragraph talking about new material. We were writing new material, but we won't go there. But yeah, so this was, like I said, I was very honored, very humbled, very privileged to be a part of this amazing magazine. I mean, look, it's got some, you know, it's got some of my heroes on here, you know. This particular issue, you know, Paul Turner, Glenn Hughes, Mark King, you know. It's just, I want to thank those guys at Bass Guitar Magazine very much for bringing me in and making me a part of this family. Very humbling, very honored indeed to have this article written on me. So just wanted to come on and share it. Peace to everyone, and we'll see you out there.